How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the Movie Castle, and today we're going to be taking a look at the very first hack/slash annual. This story is entitled Murder Suicide, and here's hoping the overlords don't get upset at me for saying the S word, but that's what the story is entitled. And it's called this because it's a crossover with the online group The Suicide Girls, an adult site focused on goth and punk rock girls. Lots of tattoos and, interesting outfits there. And you can see with Cassie being a dark and kind of gothic girl herself, the crossover kind of comes naturally. In fact, I think the Suicide Girls at the time of this comic's initial release actually had their own comic book, so I guess it really did make sense. And this comic gives us a really interesting killer. We're talking about early online culture, and we get to see this guy who's a little too counterculture, and he starts to hate everybody and, border on being a terrorist. And when he dies, he gets into the internet, and he has internet electricity powers, kind of similar to Wes Craven's Shocker, which is kind of an underrated film. Go check it out if you like this. But I really do like how Hack/Slash is willing to parody everybody. Hack/Slash is kind of a punk rock comic book. It is kind of counterculture and underground, but it is also saying, hey, don't go too far, or we're going to poke fun at you as well. And this does lead to a really fun, over-the-top, prolonged battle sequence towards the end, and it's a fun little aside. And I will say, though, that is the biggest thing, is this is kind of just an aside, a fun little crossover event that kind of goes into its own little thing. Don't expect too much about the mystery of Cassie's father or anything related to the big overall plot, but if you want a fun, really quick little side adventure, this is really cool and definitely does have some interesting moments, and I can recommend it. Anyway, though, if you guys want to see the story in a bit more detail, I'm going to switch over to the close-up camera. I'll show you guys some of the story and the art, but I'll be avoiding major spoilers, so without further ado, to the close-up camera. Alright, here we are inside the castle, taking a closer look at Hack/Slash Annual Number 1, Murder Suicide. Again, we're going to be looking in Omnibus 2, cracking it open to the credits page. As always, the writer is Tim Seeley. But if we look over here, we can see that this time around the penciler is actually Tim Seeley as well. So cool that he got to draw this comic. Flip it to the inside and we get to see the cool cover for this story. We get the villain looming over Cassie, and she's with a bunch of the other Suicide Girls. And then we see the villain has got 1s and 0s in his eyes, a barcode, and some cool goggles with some electricity coming out of his head. It's a fun cover. Got to love Cassie there in the center. Anyway, after that, let's go ahead and take a look at the story proper. I'm not going to be doing any major spoilers, but I do want to take a look at a few plot points in the art and say my piece on a few things, so let's dive in. We open up with a classic "but how did we get here" moment, where we can see Cassie posing for the Suicide Girls, and she's really nervous, and we wonder how she got here. We then flash back in time, and we get to see one of the girls is dating this guy named Diabolique, and he is very idealistic, and he has all these things about how people are just part of the system, and he starts to refer to people as like meat puppets and stuff. Well, it turns out the girl knew that he was going too far and called the police on him, and he decides to escape. The fight goes to the nearby power plant, where our killer, of course, does not survive. However, when the cops are almost done with her, the girl grabs the USB and decides to check in and read his manifesto. However, the manifesto goes through the internet and starts to take over the other girls, and they will eventually live up to the group's name and wind up ending their own lives. We then open to a good character scene with Cassie and Vlad. They've saved just enough money to go see a movie, and it's like one of their few good days off. However, Vlad decides to give his money to a homeless person who needs it better, and Cassie is going to say, hey, don't do that, we don't have much money as is, and now only one of us can go to the movie, and Cassie decides to send Vlad in her place, and she's just going to hang out in the van. It's a great way to talk about these characters, to see Vlad just being so open and giving and Cassie being the more logical one, but the theme set up in here will come around at the end, and it does have a really good payoff. Afterwards, I do love Vlad trying to explain it, but totally missing all the points. And then, of course, Chris is going to call and say, hey, these girls are in trouble, and they actually know about him because of Scotty Young. He did an interview and got the contact information over, which I'm guessing at least one section of trailers either wasn't canon or isn't going to happen for quite a while. But we get Chris being a little bit more perverted than he normally is here, but I guess it is the subject matter. Well, Cassie gets there and talks to the people in charge, and they find out that Chris had made a plan that if they pull all the other girls off the site and have Cassie pose, then the killer will have to go directly after her. And of course, that's where we get to the beginning part. And I won't go too much farther in the book than this, but we get Cassie talking to one of the other girls and talking about why she does this and having to live her life and wanting to sort of take advantage of every moment she can. And it is a good bit of character development and a good reason for Cassie being talked into this. And yeah, I will say, because some of you are curious, no, they don't show Cassie's pictures in the book, but we do get a fun finale towards the end, and I don't want to show you too much of it, but I do want to show you this strange case of how they decide to gear up for the slasher with Cassie having the big Hulk fist. It's some fun gags and some fun moments. Overall, as I said, this is kind of standalone and doesn't really affect too much of the main plot, and a lot of it is kind of action heavy, but when it does characters, it does them well. The way Cassie and Vlad's plot loops around, and also the good parody character of Diabolique. And, you know, just a fun internet culture, electricity story. Not the biggest, best thing ever, but a fun little side piece, and there's a lot to get out of it, and I can recommend it. Anyway, to everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching. To everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You really are helping the channel out. I'll leave a relevant playlist on the bottom. This should be my hack slash playlist where you can see me talk about a lot of the past entries in this series, and I look forward to getting to more soon. Anyway, have a good day. I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Relevant playlist on the bottom. Have a good day now.